Hello and welcome. I'm Justin Grogan, your Asheville real estate advisor. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down what happened in the Asheville housing market in 2025, as well as providing an outlook for what we think will happen in the Asheville housing market in 2026. So if you're very data driven and analytical, this is the video for you. The goal here is to not just help you understand what happened, but to understand why it happened so you can best position yourself for success as you navigate the market in 2026. So let's get to it. With the big picture of what happened in 2025 is that we saw inventory increase significantly compared to the last couple of years. So this means there was a lot of listings this year compared to what we've seen recently. And with that, buyer demand stayed pretty flat. So think of the basics of economics here. When you have a big increase in supply, but your demand stays relatively flat, that's going to create downward pressure on pricing and a market that shifted more in favor of buyers. So we'll dive a little bit more into some of the data here that supports this thesis, but this is the big picture of kind of what happened in the real estate market in 2025. So here you can see active listings rose sharply. We were at just under 2,800 at the end of 2024. This past year, we ended with almost 3,900, representing a 41% increase year over year. So a lot of listings hit the market this year compared to the previous few years. And demand stayed pretty flat. You see in 24, there was almost 8,000 homes that were sold in the Asheville area. In 25, that number went up slightly to 8,351, a 5% increase year over year. So relatively flat demand, maybe a small bump there, but nowhere near enough to catch up to that 41% jump we saw in inventory. And so what does this all mean? Did we have a buyer's market or a seller's market? Well, we look at this data point as real estate professionals in assessing that. It's called months of inventory. What months of inventory tells us is if no new listings hit the market, how long would it take to sell all of the existing homes on the market? So the closer that number is to zero, the more of a seller's market it is. The higher that number it is, the more of a buyer's market it is. So you can see the trend from the last few years. In 23, it was at 3.1 months. In 24, it was at 4.5 months. And in 25, it was up to 5.9 months. So we went from a pretty solid seller's market in 23 to a moderate seller's market in 24 to an outright balanced market in 25. And in a balanced market, what that essentially means is that it kind of favors both the buyers and the sellers. It really just depends on the circumstances. So it's important here that you work with a really knowledgeable, trusted real estate professional as you're looking to buy or sell, because you want to understand based on the price point and the area you're looking at, are you looking at something that's more of a seller's market or more of a buyer's market? Because all of it exists in today's market. It's just a matter of identifying what's what. And so for 26, I think we're going to see this trend continue. And I think we're going to move solidly into a balanced market, perhaps even creeping into a buyer's market by the end of the year. So I expect this trend to kind of continue to move more or less on this same trend line. And so what does this mean? Median days on market in 24 was 48 days. In 25, it was 52 days. So we saw a slight increase year over year on how long homes were on the market. And all of this pushed sales prices down from a median perspective. In 2024, we were at 440,000. In 25, we went down to 435,000. So that's about a 1.1% drop in the median sales price in that year. And so one thing to understand here, all of these data points are for the Asheville area. So that encompasses 7 counties. So each of these counties perform differently on all of these measures, and they all have their nuances. So again, this is giving us a 30,000 foot perspective on the market, but it's really important that you're working with a trusted professional so you can understand based on where you're shopping or where you're looking to sell your home, how does that fit into this, and where on the scale are you based on the location and the price. And so what we saw in terms of sale price compared to the original list price, in 24, homes were selling at about 95.7% of their list price, meaning that buyers on average were getting a 4.3% discount off the purchase price. In 2025, that number went down to 93.1%. So on average, buyers were getting almost a 7% discount off of that original list price. So we're seeing that's kind of the confluence of events there with more supply, flat demand, buyers have more to choose from, therefore they can generally negotiate better circumstances for themselves. And so what this meant in real life, I look at listings and homes, they fall into one of three buckets. Either houses sell quickly, they sell after a little bit of time, or they never sell at all. And so we can see those three buckets were pretty evenly represented in 2025. You had 30% of homes that sold quickly in less than 28 days. So this tells us that homes are still selling pretty quickly, that are priced right and in good condition. 35% of homes sold only after a 10 to 13% price reduction. So only after a lot of time and a lot of price reductions and probably a lot of headaches too. And then 35% of homes lingered on the market and never sold at all. So what does this mean for buyers? So what it means for buyers is that new well-priced listings can still be pretty competitive in our market. As we saw, 30% of homes are still selling in that 28-day, that 0 to 28-day range. And so this means that if it's a new listing that really piques your interest and you really like, chances are there's other buyers out there that really like that as well. So it's not unusual for us to still see multiple offer situations in some circumstances in our market right now. Anecdotally speaking, for myself, in the year of 2025, I had 4 separate deals that were multiple offer situations, 2 where I was representing the seller, 2 where I was representing the buyer. So multiple offers aren't super common anymore, but they still happen. And so it's understanding, again, it's a balanced market. There are some times where it's advantageous for the buyers and sometimes where it's advantageous for the sellers. You got to know which pool you're swimming in order to be successful in the market. But then on the other side of that, homes that are on the market for 30 plus days offer you a really great opportunity to negotiate favorable terms. And favorable terms isn't just the lowest price point, although that's part of it, where you want to get the home for the lowest price you can. There's a lot of other terms of an offer that a really good negotiator and a really knowledgeable agent can help you negotiate to help make it a overall great deal for you, not just one with a lower price, but with some other things like seller paid closing costs, rate buy downs, and things of that nature. So all stuff that, we could dive deeper into. I could do an hour video on this, but we'll keep it brief. And so what this means for sellers, pricing and condition has always sold homes, and now it's more important now than it's been in a long time to really nail those things. You got to get the right price out of the gate, and you also have to make sure your home presents at a 10 out of 10 on its potential. So from that presentation perspective, it doesn't mean you need to go remodel your kitchen and redo all the bathrooms, but it does mean that you probably need to pressure wash the exterior of your home, to put fresh mulch out, to put some fresh plants, to do touch-up painting, to deep clean the interior. So you've got to do a little bit more to make sure your home presents at the absolute best that it can present. And then you've got to price the home correctly. That if you're pricing too high in the market right now, you're going to linger and it's going to be painful. And you're probably going to net less in the long run than you would have if you just priced it correctly out of the gate. And so all of this, what does this mean for 2026? I think 2026 is going to be largely more of the same as what we saw in 2025. Prices are going to remain relatively flat, perhaps slightly down year over year. Demand is going to stay about where it's been. I think there's some potential for slight rate relief. Rates could come down a little bit. They're in the low 6s right now, but we're talking about like nibbling at the margins here. There's not going to be, in all likelihood, a huge drop in rates that's going to cause the market to shift in a substantial way. And so if the market's not being driven by interest rates, I think what's going to drive the market in 26 is inventory, demographics, and migration patterns. Demographics being a really key component to this, in that the most active cohort out there in the real estate market nationally here over the last couple of years have been baby boomers, retirees, those folks who are now have the financial flexibility and the lifestyle flexibility to live where they want, to be closer to the grandkids, to downsize, to move into a single level living that's more conducive towards aging in place. So that's a really, really active cohort right now. And migration patterns references inbound migration markets such as ours here in Asheville, where there's still more people moving here than leaving. And as long as your net population continues to go up, that's a good buttress to make sure that the real estate market stays pretty solid and pretty strong, despite some challenging headwinds that we're seeing nationally. So that's it. So that's our recap of what happened in 25, what I think is going to happen in 26. I appreciate you watching. If you're looking to get in the game here in 26, whether that's buying, selling, or investing, please reach out. I'd love to connect, dive a little bit deeper into this, and see how we can best help you be successful in the coming year. I'm Justin Grogan, your Asheville real estate advisor. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.